Hey, what is up guys? This is Nishi from MST.TV here, back with another Market Watch episode. So today we're taking a look at a few cards that are worth paying attention to in the aftermath of the Battles of Legend Monster Mayhem reveals from yesterday. Now, Battles of Legend sets are always really cool, and this one brought support for like 6 or 7 different old archetypes. Really awesome to see. And of course, it also brings with it some much needed reprints and holo upgrades. We got some really awesome ones, including cards like Jirak Impact, another holo printing of each of the adult dragon rulers, and everyone's chase card from the set, Labyrinth Wall. In all seriousness though, the cards that were actually in the set do give us a bit of info to help maneuver around the rest of the market, and we're going to take a look at some of those noteworthy cards today. Let's get started. Kicking things off, let's take a look at Heraldic Beast Leo. So Leo is a card that we talked about not too long ago. The Heraldic Beast theme is one that came out back when Xyz were still pretty new, and they've never really been meta relevant at all. However, the cards did get some new support in Alliance Insights, which has actually made them somewhat meta relevant. At the very least, Heraldic Beast Ryziel is a popular variant that's able to flood the board with level 4 bodies extremely consistently. Leo is a key card because it can be sent to the graveyard with the effect of number 18, and when Leo is sent to the graveyard, it allows you to search for a Heraldic Beast monster from your deck. Now that said, this is generally run at 1 to 2 copies, but because Heraldic Beasts have never really been popular, a lot of them have just one printing. Well, as it turns out, a bunch of Heraldic Beast cards were reprinted in Monster Mayhem, including things like Advanced Heraldry Art. However, despite Leo being one of the more important pieces, it's the cards that don't really see play at all that actually got the reprint in Monster Mayhem. This is an interesting situation to be in. On one hand, the natural response is for the market to buy up copies of Leo because the card dodged a reprint where it was somewhat expected, so the card theoretically should go up in price. However, on the other hand, I think that this should be an obvious sign that the card is going to be reprinted in an upcoming OTS tournament pack, either as a common or super rare, which would bring its price way down. Now, that's not a guarantee, so theoretically this card could go crazy in terms of price if it, for whatever reason, isn't reprinted, but everyone is expecting the reprint to come, so that limits how much higher it can go price-wise. For now, the card has gone up a little bit from $4 to $5 before to now being a $7 to $8 card. If you're planning on playing Heraldic Beast in the future, either in the current format or in Time Wizard formats, you can take the risk and just hold on to a playset of the card, but if you aren't using them, I'd definitely try to offload these before that reprint eventually drops. Up next, let's take a look at Ignis Heat, the True Draco Warrior. So although True Draco didn't get new support in Monster Mayhem, we actually saw a lot of True Draco cards get reprinted, including Heritage, Masterpiece, and Dynamite Knight. However, when I was looking at the reprints, the one card that stood out to me as not being included was Ignis Heat. This card is still a good card for the strategy as it's able to tutor out Heritage or Disciples, maybe not as useful as being able to access a trap card, but still a really good option to have nonetheless. However, I do think that Ignis Heat is worth looking at because it specifically was not reprinted. So many times in the Yu-Gi-Oh market's history, we see a bunch of cards from a certain theme get reprinted, but then one card is excluded for whatever reason, and that card skyrockets in price. Now here, I think that we could see that with Ignis Heat. The other card I considered was Majesty Maiden. Majesty Maiden actually got an extra printing because it was also in the tins, and it was in Fist of the Gadgets, whereas Ignis Heat was just in Fist of the Gadgets. Also, Majesty Maiden was a super rare in Fist, while Ignis Heat was a secret rare, so it was much harder to pull. Now, at the moment, this card honestly isn't too expensive. Either version is only going to cost you about $3, and it definitely has the potential to go up further because a lot of players are just fond of the deck and will want to put it together now that the rest of the deck is so much more accessible. If you guys can, I think that this is a really solid card to try to pick up at your locals for maybe $2 in cash or $3 in trade. Just be aware that just like with Leo, this definitely has the possibility to be reprinted in an upcoming OTS pack because all of the other cards are seeing reprints at the same time. I do want to take a second to remind all of you to check out our website, MSTmerch.com. Now, over at MSTmerch.com, we have everything that you will need to optimize your Yu-Gi-Oh tournament experience. We have the basics with white, black, pink, and our new purple matted sleeves, which are my personal favorites, as well as smooth and matted sleeves to double sleeve your valuable cards and sleeves with for tournament play. But we also have some other items that you can really use to customize your collection. We have amazing foil sleeves, including some with the MST.TV logo, and dividers and subdividers so that you can keep your collection perfectly organized and easily accessible. Regardless of if you're a competitive or casual player, I'm certain that you'll find something that you will enjoy over at MSTmerch.com. Next up, let's look once again at number 67 Paradise Smasher. So we have talked about this card in the past. It's a tech card that players are using in the Vanquish Soul Canine deck over in the OCG. Basically, you roll dice with your opponent during main phase 1, and whoever rolls the higher total cannot activate monster effects until the end of the next turn. Now, it does have a way to try and manipulate the result as well, so it's not just like a blind 50-50. I think that initially, number 67 was viewed as something that was really gimmicky and wasn't expected to see a ton of play. However, recently we've seen a trend in the OCG where most builds are actually including this in their extra decks, as it basically stops your opponent from doing anything for both your turn and their turn, which means you should be able to win the game pretty easily from there. Now, number 67 only has one printing, but it was actually in another Battles of Legends set, Relentless Revenge, which was the second one to ever come out. A few months ago, this card jumped in price to about $10, and that seemed high at the time because this was just bulk before, but we've actually seen it shoot up in price once again over the last couple of weeks, and it now sits up at $35 per copy on TCG Player. I think a lot of players were hoping that it would be reprinted in Monster Mayhem potentially, but maybe a reprint in an OTS tournament pack or Justice Hunters itself would make more sense, a bit closer to the actual release of the K9 cards. But yeah, this is definitely an interesting one. If you missed this when it spiked in price the first time, you might want to try and dig up any of your extras again so that you can offload them at an even crazier price point. Alright, so this is a pretty silly one. We next have Vanilla. So this card is a level 1 beast vanilla monster, and I'm pretty sure it's one of the more obscure cards that we've seen in the game's history. However, apparently this is something that's seeing play over in the OCG in very specific Yummy variants. Now, it's not in every single Yummy build, but there are some players that have seen success with Primite Yummy, as you can bring out Vanilla, and it's a vanilla with over 2,000 defense points, so it's not exactly easy to beat over, but it will turn on your Primite cards. However, at the same time, this is another monster that you can pull out of the deck with Obedience Schooled, and if you're just going to use the monsters to link or synchro climb anyways, it basically doesn't matter that the card doesn't have an effect. So yeah, this is definitely more of a fun card that has been trending recently. I know a bunch of people have messaged me recently to talk about this card. It only has one printing as a common from back in Photon Shockwave, so quite a few years ago. I think this one will probably actually have the best stats of any level 1 beast monster that you'll find, so that's an interesting piece of trivia there. Obviously, before this card was just bulk, but now you'll probably actually be able to find people willing to pay $1 or $2 for this card if you can find them sitting around in bulk at your locals or at home. Okay, so we have another odd one here. It's Primite Imperial Dragon. Now this card is sort of the forgotten Primite card from Rage of the Abyss. I don't think anyone ever really talks about it. Basically, you reveal it in your hand during your opponent's turn and then normal summon a Primite monster, which would be this card, by tributing a normal monster. And on summon, you can negate the effects of all face-up monsters your opponent currently controls, then banish all monsters your opponent controls with the same type or attribute as a normal monster in your graveyard. So yeah, I think that theoretically, this card could be really scary, but in practice, it's just that there's so many things that have to go exactly the way you want, and it's a little bit too situational. It's just too much for the card to really be that practical or see any competitive usage. So really, I don't think players are expecting Imperial Dragon to see competitive play anytime soon. However, I think it's really just players wanting to be prepared that's causing this card to trend on the market right now, with reprints to Ether Barrel, Lordly Load, and Drill Beam in Battles of Legend Monster Mayhem. The whole Primite engine is theoretically going to be really cheap, so it's worth spending a few extra dollars to grab Imperial Dragons and have basically every card from the theme. On top of that, they are getting new support in Duelist Advance, so maybe there's some hope that new stuff will come out in the future that might make this card somewhat relevant. Now with this one, not too crazy of a price spike. This was basically bulk before, but we've now seen a ton of copies moving within the last couple days, and the card is going to cost you a couple of dollars each. I wouldn't go too crazy on this card, but it's not a horrible idea to grab a few copies at $1 each, just in case. This next one is interesting. We have Kurara Div Incarnate. So this card is a really interesting tech option. It's not an engine piece for any strategy, but it's really just a board breaker. So it tributes monsters on the field that activated their effects this turn, then gains attack points. So depending on the deck, this card can be really devastating. Now back a few formats ago, this was a really effective card against Kashtira, since Shangri-Iro would trigger in the standby phase, then Arise Heart had its mandatory attaching effect. So this card got rid of two problems at once with very little effort. Now it has been a while since Kurara has seen any sort of usage at all. However, now it seems that the card is starting to see more play over in the OCG. Recently, I've noticed Kurara being used at 1 or 2 in Vanquish Soul decks, which is interesting. It's a fire monster, so you can reveal it for Vanquish Soul effects, but I'm not sure if there's a specific deck that Kurara is particularly strong against, or if it's just one of the better generic monsters that they have chosen to play. Anyways, the prices of Kurara are up across the board for all of its different printings. The Starlight Rare version is the highest rarity printing. They're technically like a couple $100 right now because that's the cheapest one available, but there's just one sold listing at 120 and then one at around 200. Not much more than that, so it's going to be a little bit difficult to gauge what you guys should actually be paying for it. After that, we do have the Ultimate Rare from the OTS Tournament Pack. That printing is up a little bit. They were around $15 before. They're now up to just over the $20 mark. And then finally, the card has 2 secret rare printings. Its original printing in Power of the Elements and then a reprint in an old Battles of Legends set. Either of those used to be pretty cheap when the card was seeing no play, but they're back up to anywhere from $6 to $8. This definitely has the potential to be a rewarding pickup depending on just how much more play the card will see in the future, though it never is a certainty given the differences we have between the TCG and OCG. And finally, the last card I want to take a look at for today is Dino Wrestler Pankertops. So this card used to be a really scary card, so much so that at one point it was limited to 1. It's a 2600 attack point body that can be special summoned if your opponent controls more monsters than you do, so only really useful going second. It also has a quick effect where you contribute it to destroy any card on the field as well. So I remember before, people swore that Kashtira Fenrir was just universally better than this card. However, it seems that some players are excited about using Pankertops in the future, as a bunch of players are siding it over in the OCG, and that's starting to trickle over here with some players' TCG preparations as well. Now with Fenrir, you can only get rid of a problem if a monster effect is activated, but with Pankertops it's a little bit more flexible, right? Since you can use it to hit back row, pop a monster on summon before its effect can even activate. With Pankertops, the timing of its effect can also be a lot more flexible. Like if your opponent tries to interact with Pankertops, you can chain Pankertops to still get value out of it, while that doesn't really happen a lot of the time with Fenrir. At the same time though, I think Fenrir is still banned in the OCG, so maybe they're only playing Pankertops because that's the best thing that they have available, but only time will tell us for sure. Anyways, Pankertops has a ton of low rarity printings and it's very easily accessible. It was originally a common, so everyone should have access to it. With this card, it's crazy because the higher rarity printings are ridiculously cheap. It got a CR printing while it was limited to 1. Even though it's at 3 now, those are still around $25 to $30, which isn't bad at all. But then after that, it was a QCR in last year's tins, but you were guaranteed a QCR per pack. So these are only about $3 to $4 even now. And then the cleaner version is the secret rare from an old Battles of Legends set. Even those are only like $1 or $2 now. Honestly, I think Pankertops is a really scary card if it ever does make its way back into the format, and it's something that I would be prepared for. Grab a set of one of those nicer rarities for yourself to use, because without many luxury rarity printings available, they're bound to go up at least a little bit in the future. Alright guys, that is all I have for today's episode. Definitely not too much trending on the market because of Monster Mayhem as I was expecting. I think they actually did a pretty good job of reprinting like all the Orcus cards, all the Dragon Maid cards, and all the Punk cards so that nothing was really left behind. And then between this set and then the last couple of like nostalgia pools, most of the cards that we've seen for these relevant archetypes are actually already reprinted. There were obviously a few misses that we talked about, and then there were some other pretty big name cards that I thought was going to be in Battles of Legend, but were apparently not in there at all. Maybe we'll cover those in an episode later on this week. Anyways guys, if you did enjoy today's Market Watch episode, please make sure you let me know by hitting that thumbs up button. Make sure you leave a comment in the comment section down below. Hit subscribe if you haven't already, and until next time guys, don't forget to hold on to your MST.TV.